Hey, Dr. Josh here. And like I mentioned on the very first video on this channel, I wanted to make sure that you're getting value out of literally every single video that you watch on this channel. So I know your time is important. I want to cover some things that I feel like it can actually make a real difference in your life in the areas of health and wellness, also on finances or wealth, and then also in leisure. Everyone's got to have a little fun as well. So this particular topic, though, I want to stick to actually the topic of money because all of us deal with money on a very regular basis. I mean, it affects so many different areas of our life, the different options that we feel like we have, the reasons that we go to work every day and actually go out and make a living. A lot of people are basically just trying to pay the bills, but there are smarter ways to treat money than others. So on this channel, over the course of time, I hope to give you some kind of tips and tricks that will make a big difference in helping you win the money game and being smart with the money that you already have, as well as I'd like to show you ways to actually bring more money in. I also want to actually give you kind of the future of money, a little bit of information about things like cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, things along those lines. But I realized if I'm going to talk about any of those areas, I literally probably have to start at the very beginning of talking about money, and that's the history of money. So once we kind of understand the foundation there, we can move on to some of those different topics later on. So let's go back to the very, very beginning when we're literally going all the way back to bartering. So starting at the very beginning, say that I have some chickens and some eggs. This guy over here, he's got some milk and some cows. Guy over there, maybe he's got lumber or pigs. Bottom line is that if we don't have some way of utilizing something in order to create a medium of exchange, that our hands are kind of tied. Because say that I only have chickens and eggs and I want some milk, well, that works fine as long as that person that has the milk wants chickens or eggs, or the fact that maybe I want a whole cow, but I can't give enough eggs to actually pay for a whole cow. We run into all these different types of scenarios when we don't have some kind of medium of exchange. So gradually over the course of time, instead of the barter system where I'm basically trading stuff for other stuff, we actually had to end up with something that was going to be durable. Because again, if we use something like seashells or eggs or something along those lines, it wasn't something that actually was durable. It was something that actually was known more of as a commodity money. And there are all sorts of different commodity monies if we look back in history. Let's actually take a look at going back to the Roman soldiers. If you've ever heard the term salary, that actually comes all the way back from the Roman soldiers because they were actually paid a salarium. That's a year's worth of salt for their service in the army. So yes, we still use the word salary. It comes from the root word sal, which means salt in Latin, and that's because Roman soldiers were actually paid in salt for a year's worth of their service. But bottom line, if we're dealing with some type of commodity like salt, then it doesn't really stand the test of time because it's not durable. You could probably go make it or get it somewhere else. So what ended up happening is over the course of time, when we found more durable things like different types of metals, that actually ended up becoming something that we started treating as money. And pretty much, if you look all over the world for this aspect, we're looking at about gold being the actual universal money. It seems like we as humans just realize, this stuff's valuable. There's only so much of it. It'd be a good thing to actually make sure that it has value, that we can trade it back and forth. So again, going back, instead of the barter system, I could give a little bit of gold for a whole cow, stuff like that. He could take that gold. He could then use that to go get some lumber, something else. We didn't have to use something that basically didn't stand the test of time. And gold is actually something that has held value over time tremendously well as well. If we fast forward a little bit from actually just trading the gold, things started to basically evolve to where we had things called goldsmiths. Now, not only did goldsmiths use gold to make things, but they also kind of served as a bank. And basically when we have a bank holding our gold for us, because it's not necessarily real easy to transport gold all the time and be able to pay, if we had a lot of gold, we'd be carrying around some pretty heavy stuff. And also we'd run the risk of being robbed and losing kind of all of our savings. So what we would do is we would give that gold to a goldsmith and he would say, here's your receipt. Here's how much gold I have of yours. You have this now piece of paper that says it's worth X amount of gold. And that's basically when this all started, even using paper money. It actually started as receipts of how much gold that someone else was holding for you. Well, it didn't take long before we realized that, you know what, I don't have to go all the way back, retrieve the gold, and then pay the person. I have this slip of paper here that says it's worth X amount of gold. And so I could actually start buying things with these slips of paper. So that's where money kind of started from a currency standpoint, but it also started a few problems. Now, the goldsmiths started realizing, because they're lending things out, making a little bit interest the same way as banks do now. What they realize, though, is that there's no way that all these people are going to come back and ask for all of their gold at exactly the same time. So there's a good chance I can probably actually loan out a little bit more, say that I only have X amount of gold, but I can actually hold some of that and actually print out more paper money or paper slips. And now we actually have what's called fractional reserve banking, something that's actually still used to this day. It's I only have to have X amount of gold, but I can loan out actually more gold or more value than I actually have. And that actually played into a huge role when we move all the way forward. Let's go all the way up into the 1900s. In 1913, that's actually when the Fed was created. Now, all of our currency here in the US used to be backed by gold. That means that if you actually wanted your money back and you wanted it actually in gold, that means that it was actually being stored somewhere and that you could actually ask for your gold back and you would be able to give the currency back. The currency was as good as gold. But over the course of time, the same type of thing happened. We got into the fractional reserve type of arena. We started printing out more money than any of the banks actually had. And when we ran into times where the government needed more money, they would find ways to utilize the Fed, which, by the way, is a non-government agency. It's something completely independent from our government. Most people don't realize the Fed is like that. But when we actually want more money in circulation, we just make up a bunch of bonds, we sell them to the Fed, then we print up a bunch of money. That money goes into circulation, and every time that we print up more money, that makes the money or the currency that's actually already out there worth just a little bit less. So as we've done that gradually over the course of time, our money has actually deteriorated in value. You know, if we kind of fast forward past 1913 all the way up to the 1930s, now we've got the president in 1933, we've got Roosevelt. He needs money to basically help work through a war, work through the Great Depression. All of these things are finding ways to get more money out there. Again, devaluing the currency, causing all sorts of problems. And we actually went off of the gold standard at that point. We had more money out there, more currency out there than we could possibly have in gold. So people started losing their faith in the dollar. And if we look at what a dollar could buy back all the way back then, before we went off the gold standard, it could buy $1 worth of goods. But now if we look at it, we can actually only buy 4 cents worth of goods with that same amount of money. So back when the government needed money, they actually had a mandate saying, if you have gold, you need to turn it in. We're going to pay you a little more than $20 an ounce for your gold. And here you can have that money. We're taking all the gold. You know, what ended up happening since the government fixed that price, it wasn't long after this, and catch this because this is some garbage, but the bottom line, they actually raised a whole bunch of money by then saying now gold is worth $35 an ounce, not the 20 that we gave you, but now that the government has a whole bunch of it, now it's worth $35 an ounce. We're going to keep printing out this money. Gold is worth more now that we have it all. I know it almost sounds like I made this up, right? Because it's so ludicrous that they could just do that. But bottom line, that's what the government did. And you know, Nixon back then in the 70s, at that point, we were completely off the gold standard, and we didn't allow anyone to be able, even other countries, to say, you know, give us back X amount of dollars in gold. You know, we only have X amount to give back, so we can't do that anymore. And the bottom line is, ever since that gold standard started, we actually ended up being in good shape until we went off of the gold standard, and then gradually the value of our money went down the tube. So a little bit of history there, all the way back to the Roman government, a little bit about commodity money, a little bit about the gold standard, all the way to fractional reserve banking, what we have now, where literally by doing mortgages, by selling different loans to the Fed, different bonds, we're just printing money left and right. And that actually lays the foundation for things that we're going to talk about in the future here, about things like cryptocurrency, where there's actually a finite amount of something, just like there was a finite amount of gold, or something that was actually really difficult to get. You know, sometimes people would think that inflation may be a good thing, but actually it's deteriorating our money. And people have been kind of conned into thinking that this is an okay thing. But if you look at all the debt that our government has, and basically how other countries own our debt, it's a real bad situation. So we're going to cover more of that stuff on a later video. I think that's probably enough for today. But the bottom line, things to remember, is we started out with barter. We eventually moved up through things that are durable, went to gold. Gold was great, started printing currency that was backed by gold, went away from the gold standard. The value of every single dollar gradually went down. We're kind of in that downward spiral now. We'll eventually get to cryptocurrency, something that's finite, something that's picking up traction. And today being November 23rd, if you take a look at what Bitcoin is doing right now, in times of instability, places that have money and smart money are actually moving away from the US dollar and moving into something that has a finite amount. So I'll leave it there for today. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you on the next one.